Hey everybody, Questwise back here with another video today. Today we're going to talk about a game many of you have probably heard of. A few of you may have even played it, and maybe just one or two of you have actually survived the experience. The game I'm talking about today is Dungeon Crawl Classics. This is a game that's caught my attention a few years ago, maybe now a year and a half or so ago. I had heard of the game for quite a while, and then finally was in a local bookstore and found a copy of this on the shelf. And the price point was right. I had the money at the time. I figured, you know what, I'll give it a shot, give it a whirl, see what happens. A little bit intimidated by this. Yeah, so this thing is massively huge. But what I found is to not be intimidated by the size of this, because a majority of this is magical spells and all the flavor to those spells. Each spell has at least a 1 or 2 page spread in here, so majority of the rules are just a small portion of this. What is really cool about Dungeon Crawl Classics? It is a true Appendix N role-playing game. If you don't know what Appendix N is, Appendix N, in the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition, at the very back of it there were a set of appendices, and one of them was Appendix N, and it was a list of books and articles and movies and what have you that were inspiration to Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson into creating the game, and what they used as sort of their inspiration to play and create the adventures and the game, as it were. It's always been people have taken up the Appendix N challenge over time. Those to read the list of those books that were inspiration for the game, and a lot of those books were written in the 60s, 70s, maybe even earlier than that, 1940s. A lot of them were pulp fiction, such as Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. It could be Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard, Lovecraft stories, tons of other ones in there. John Carter of Mars, also by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And every edition since then has its own Appendix N of list of books that had inspired that particular version or edition. Dungeon Crawl Classics takes that Appendix N from the original 1970s stuff, and it takes all that flavor from that weird, strange, otherworldly science fiction and fantasy novels and stories and brings it to this game. What's really unique about DCC, as it's affectionately called, Dungeon Crawl Classics, or DCC, is that it's not so much just a world setting that brings flavor to it. It's not just a particular type of story that it tries to emulate. What's really unique about DCC is that the rules themselves, the actual rules that run the game, are what provide the flavor. So, for instance, it's always lucky to have a halfling in the party, because halflings are inherently lucky, and everybody has a luck attribute, but halflings have the ability to share their luck with others. So it's like having a rabbit's foot in your party. To have a halfling along is always a good luck charm. So it's little things like that, little tweaks to the actual rules themselves. It's not just the fluff, it's not just the background story, it's not just the world setting. It's actually ingrained into the rules that set this sort of quirky, weird, kind of gonzo, over-the-top role-playing experience. Magic is the other thing in this game that is by far one of the coolest and most the biggest aspect that sort of feeds upon the idea that the rules themselves create the atmosphere for this game. Magic is completely unpredictable. Like I was telling you, a majority of this book are notes on the different spells. Like I said, each spell has its own page. So, for instance, Resist Heat and Cold has an entire page devoted to just it. Why it does that is because every time you cast a spell in this game, there's a chance that you could fail. And then there's a chart that you would roll on to see what exactly happens if you fail that spell. What's cool about that is that it's tied to the flavor of the rules again. That particular spell has a particular set of side effects. It's not just one chart for any spell you fail. It is specific to that spell. So, and I just off the top of my head, if you fail a roll on resist heat or cold, maybe something heats up next to you instead. Or you become extremely cold. Or you turn into a block of ice. Again, those might be completely wrong. I'm not even looking at the page right now. But that's the idea behind it. That each time you fail a spell, the rules specifically portray what happens to as a risk of failing that particular spell, as opposed to being just a generic list of things that happen if you happen to fail. I think that's genius. I think it's beautiful. I think it's fun. I think it's crazy. This game is a hoot to play. A game is not meant to be taken very seriously. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't go into this with a character that you absolutely love and you want to play forever, because that's not going to happen. The death rate in this game is very, very high. And that's the other thing about this game that's really fantastic as well. When you begin the game, now you don't have to do this, but it's definitely a driving force behind this whole thing. And because of the way that the rules sort of feed the flavor of the game, it's really worth giving it a whirl. It is called a funnel. You start off with several zero-level characters. They could be anything from farmers to a blacksmith to a rat catcher. You're talking basic dirt poor peasant. You could be a noble, I guess. But you start off as a zero-level character. You have really no skills. You have a tool that you could implement as a weapon. I played a character one time that had a cart. That was his only possession. You might have a spear. If you're lucky, you might have a shovel. You might even start with just a drinking glass. And you have to try to use those to your best ability. Now, you begin with several of those characters because the funnel is meant to be like a meat grinder. It is a introductory adventure where death is very certain. Most characters, if you have anything above 2 hit points, is a pretty powerful zero-level character. So those characters, those zero-level characters, are meant to die. And when you get through the funnel, any characters that you have left are going to become your first-level character. And that'll be a character that you progress with throughout the campaign if you choose to run a campaign. Funnels are great to run at conventions. They are very, very fun. They're very, very fast. And again, the game is not meant to be taken with a very serious tone. It's meant to sort of emulate that kind of crazy 1970s, over-the-top, hack and slash, solve some puzzles, survive some traps, kind of dungeon crawl. What I came here today to talk about, in addition to talking about the game itself, which I think is fantastic. This is put out by Goodman Games. They've always been really, really kind to me whenever I've contacted them about things. I began, if you're in the know at all, I'm part of the band, which means that I've run some games at conventions. And when you do so, they will, sometimes send you, your first time they will send you some stuff like, for instance, I believe, I have one stuck right in here. They will send you cool little swag things like these, bookmarks. But on the back of these are character sheets. Official World Tour character sheets. And this is from 2016. Yeah, this is a couple of, this was from last year. But they sent me a whole bunch of these. And they sent me some buttons that I could give away that said, I survived or I died. And I also received a pin as well, too, to signify that I'm a judge of the game, or a runner, a dungeon master, if you will, or a game master. What I want to do, an idea I've had for a very long time, and I want to kind of just put this out there to you in the general internet world, is that I want you to kind of create these yourself. This game is cool. This game is fun. This game is great by itself. If you take the time to incorporate all the craziness that this game tries to encapsulate, if you try to capture that 1970s vibe, this game becomes 1,000% times. It becomes 1,000% better. It becomes an experience as opposed to just a game. I'm calling them heavy metal weekends. My goal behind these heavy metal weekends is that we will take this game, we will gather some friends, and we're going to get a place that we can secure for a weekend, Friday and Saturday night, or Saturday and Sunday, a place where everybody can crash if they need to, and we're going to make the place feel as much like a mom's basement when you were 16 years old, and maybe hang up some blacklight posters, get some Cheetos and some Mountain Dew, and then pump some crazy heavy metal 1970s, 1980s crazy heavy metal. I'm talking Led Zeppelin, I'm talking Iron Maiden, I'm talking Iron Butterfly, I'm talking Deep Purple, I'm talking Black Sabbath. This will be your background. This will be your ambiance, as it will. And then run some crazy funnel and do a mini campaign throughout the entire weekend. Play for the entire weekend if possible. But make a space available so that people can crash if they need to. You want to get a couple hours of sleep, eat and drink and be merry and be with some friends, and just give Dungeon Crawl Classics the absolute most that it deserves. And give it that experience that you're never going to forget. So I plan on putting one of these together here in my local hometown with some friends and myself. It works definitely best if you're actually at the table. A Skype, game probably will not quite encapsulate the entire idea behind it. But if you have some friends local that you can get together, people that you trust, people that you kind of want to spend a weekend with, go ahead and throw a heavy metal weekend. Throw your photos in the comments below. Let me know that you sent one up. Let me know how it went. Post some pictures in the comments below, or shoot them over to my Facebook page. Just check it out. I'm gonna, as soon as I get mine together, I'm gonna throw some pictures in there, probably some video. I might even do a live. Probably not the entire session on that whole weekend, but I would like to do a sort of a couple of live sessions, maybe of just the funnel and a couple other, bits and bobs throughout the weekend. But Dungeon Crawl Classics, heavy metal weekends, let's make it a thing, guys. Let's put it together. Throw your own, give me some ideas, maybe some ideas that I didn't talk about today that you want to throw in there that makes it even better. Let's take it back to 1975, 1976, 1977. Let's throw, let's make this a kick-ass party, and let me know what you guys think. Dungeon Crawl Classics, heavy metal weekends. Good luck, have fun, hey, and be safe. And until next time, I'm Questwise, and we're out.